Well, good morning and welcome to Sikorski's Think Abouts. Let me tell you about Laura Sikorski. First off, she's a recognized call center makeover expert in operations and technology. She's worked with hospitals, utilities, automobile manufacturers, rental companies, and numerous other industries across the nation. The call center policies, procedures, technology improvements, training programs, and implementation plans developed by Laura have improved operational excellence in all centers that she has worked with. They've enabled staff to proactively anticipate customer needs to resolve all issues through consistency and product knowledge and ensure employees are consistently meeting and or exceeding customer expectations and satisfaction. This morning, Laura's guest, Steve Leaden, he's the founder and president of Leaden Associates, and today they're going to discuss what unified communications is, what drives upgrades or replacement of your technology, and why technology is important to your future visions and strategic plan. Welcome to Sikorski's Think Abouts, and here is Laura Sikorski.
Well, thanks, Eric. I appreciate that lovely invitation. And just a slight correction, it's Leaden. Leaden.
All right, Steve's going to have to change his name to Leaden now. It's now Leaden. Steve, do you have any problem with changing your name?
You know, for the next half hour, that's absolutely fine.
All right, so he's Steve Leaden now, Laura. All right? Never corrected DJ. All right, we'll start again here. All right? No, I'm kidding.
Okay,
I'm just kidding.
cool.
I'm just kidding. Thank you.
Well, folks
Leaden.
out there, I want to welcome you to Sikorsky's Think Abouts. I know that's a mouthful. My guests and I share our operations and technology expertise to help you provide outstanding customer service and customer experiences. So as you know, my guest today is Steve Leaden, and he is founder and president of Leaden Associates, an independent communications IT consulting firm and that has been in business for 25 years, and he is located in Campbell Hall, New York. Steve and I know each other probably for about that same time frame, so I look forward to an interactive information and guest experience this morning. So, Steve, welcome. And my first question to you is, what the heck is unified communications?
Well, thanks, Laura, and thanks, Eric, for having us on this morning. So it's an interesting space. The definition of it has evolved over a period of time. It started with telephony years ago, which was your good old PBX or Centrex, which obviously goes back, 20, 30, 40 years. And eventually that name got replaced by the term telephony, or now unified communications. So UC, as we call it, or UCC, meaning Unified Communications and Collaboration, has evolved out of the idea that there was a set of tools that arrived. Now, this is a little bit specific, and there is a broader definition, but it's really to help facilitate business processes using real-time communications tools. But a little bit more specific to that, it started with telephony, and then it expanded on to video conferencing, and then, as I just mentioned, this set of tools. So the vendors in this space, including everybody from Cisco to NEC to Avaya to Unify to Mitel and others, etc., now including Microsoft and some others now in the cloud, including RingCentral and Vonage and 8x8 and other players that are now in the UC space. It started with a set of tools that included video conferencing. Now, this is all in one, suite of a single tool that's on your desktop, and it included video conferencing, collaboration, meaning you can share your screens. It includes conferencing ad hoc. It includes IM chat functions, which we've been doing forever now on mobile devices. And it also includes a presence, or we've seen that time and again on Facebook, which is your friends list. You can see who's online. So those kinds of things that were native to the consumer space a couple of years ago, again, have now evolved, to a single user interface on the desktop. And so that's where UC started. And then it became integration of directories. So you used to have to print out your own directory years ago. Now you can integrate a directory function from Microsoft or other vendors real time into, so you can look at people by name in your desktop, et cetera. So that's another space. And then the idea of unified messaging, which has been around for some time now, where you can receive all your emails, your faxing, and voice all in one suite, in one central email inbox has gotten quite huge and actually pretty much a staple in today's world.
Right. So, just to interrupt, so basically, what unified communications is taking your desktop or taking your cell phone, and you have the ability to communicate with the world however you choose to communicate. And I think that's the most exciting part about unified communication, because it puts everything together for you as the user, you as the consumer, you as a business or enterprise. So let's kind of talk about, the contact center or call center, for those of you that like to call it a call center, to talk about what strategic plans you need to make, when you're considering, let's say, for the next 3 to 5 years. So, Steve, what have you found should be on the roadmap for a strategic plan for a contact center?
Yeah, so thanks, Laura. So interestingly, in the contact center specifically, the contact center has now matured to the point where the idea of multi-channel, which we've been talking about for years now, and now has since moved into the word omni-channel, meaning a like experience no matter what the channel is, has pretty much gone mainstream at this particular point. So, for example, the basics of contact center include call routing, call reporting, quality monitoring, call recording, and of course IVR has been around for some time, and of course years ago people thought that IVR was going to go away, and some predictions were around that, but it's actually bigger than ever, and the idea of self-service has grown significantly. And then the idea of CTI screen pops has been around, and screen capture and screen scrapes and workforce management. And then it's now evolved to speech analytics, which is very, very powerful, which gives you actual analytics around the speech of the conversation or even a video conversation around that. You've got text analytics, so if you're getting email, faxing, SMS texting, you can actually see what kinds of analytics are around that. So the analytics will actually give you like phrases or like words that are being used consistently amongst multiple calls, let's call it a call, and giving you feedback in terms of reporting and how you should be able to transition that customer. So online, if you will. So interestingly, Gartner Group did a survey a couple of years ago and had predicted that by 2017, which just retired, that 89% of those who responded at the time, which there were several hundred, I understand, were going to make customer experience their now go-to main focus, okay? So you're not hearing so much about profitability or expenses any longer, which obviously that's always part of the equation, but the idea of giving the customer experience anything they want across any channel that they want is huge. So, for example, texting, millennials especially do not like to talk on the phone, and more people want to have a chat. So anytime you visit pretty much any retail site now, within about 30 seconds, there's a screen pop that pops up and asks you if you want to chat with an individual. So behind the scenes, that chat can be an individual who's answering maybe anywhere between 2 and up to 5 conversations at once, and thus sometimes a little bit of slowness that you see in the chat. But the idea of making appointments via chat or having a conversation via chat are definitely part of today's, industry. And then the idea of callback, which, again, across any contact center that we run into today, Laura, everybody wants callback. And then the idea around social media, where you can, ping or use tools that you can find out what the public is saying about you within your contact space is, where the market's going.
Right. To talk further about customer experience to our audience, what it is that the customer experience is the warm and fuzzy that businesses should be giving to every single person that contacts you, whether they contact you via voice, via email, via chat, via text. And we have to make sure that when you are discussing your technology and your customers' needs for the future, you have to bring in your IT department. You need to make sure that when, the next question for Steve is going to be, all of a sudden, let's say some vendor came in and said, well, guess what? We're not going to support your technology anymore. Your kind of system is way too old. And so Steve, as a technology consultant, has been able to help you during that process of selecting a new vendor. So, what, Steve, drives the need for a company to get a new phone system? I just mentioned, that it's not going to be supported when that's a big one. But what other items should people consider when to go for a new phone system or technology?
Sure. Thanks, Laura. So again, it starts with end of support on a system. Typically, it's an end of sale notice, with most manufacturers giving you anywhere from 12 to 24 months to make some kind of decision to either upgrade or replace that infrastructure, depending upon who the vendor is. And then beyond that, there's capacity issues, and there's actually pricing issues. So we have a customer with over 7,000 endpoints with a legacy Centrex, and we've actually been given formal notice that by the end of 2020, they will no longer support that system. We will no longer be able to provide or pick up the phone and call for any trouble reporting, et cetera. But aside from the end of support, there's also capacity issues with this same customer. They've actually run out of telephone numbers for this customer.
Oh, wow.
And lastly, the vendor gave us numbers the other day that basically said that next year, 2019, the pricing per Centrex number will increase by 50%. And then by 2020, when you're following, again, that's the year that it's going to be retired, it's going to go up another 80%. Okay, so now this legacy 20-plus-year-old Centrex will actually now be at a price point higher than a typical cloud-based unified communication solution. So in the old case, you've got just basic dial tone, voicemail, and call accounting. In the new world, you have the entire UC suite. You have mobility built into it, twinning. You have also contact center components in it as well, being separate from, the UC definition. But it's something that just simply drives it. So the idea of telephony alone, by the way, is really dead, meaning that there's really no value in it any longer. So when you're trying to get management approvals for larger projects or multi-million-dollar projects, you've got to, add some sizzle, so to speak, of the current technologies people are using everywhere. And again, it can go back to your mobile device, i.e. your chat and your presence and other kinds of things. And then the other one that's really driving it is third-party integration. So in healthcare, when we do work with some of the manufacturers such as Cerner and Epic, which are the ones that provide electronic medical records, there has to be integration into these new systems, and the legacy systems find it very, very difficult to some or even large degree to even integrate to those.
Well,
So,
and I think,
yeah.
Steve, it has a lot to do with the customer expectation. We're
Yep.
so used to calling different companies, and we like to see, that they have the latest and the greatest, again, particularly if you want to use your smartphone for contacting that user or that vendor. A lot of times they're old, what Steve is referring to as a legacy system, meaning it's so old it can't do any of the special stuff that's out there. We have to start looking at your customer base. If your customer base is baby boomers, it might not, they might not want to do all that fancy smancy stuff that we say. But if you're dealing with consumers that are millennials and want instantaneous gratification, they want it done in, one call done and I'm out. We have to take a look at that, especially when you're looking at replacement of your business phone system. And remember, technology, everything integrates through the technology today. That's voice, it's your data. As Steve mentioned, the contact centers today, they're very, very savvy. They're technology savvy, so that when a call reaches an agent, that agent already knows by a screen pop to their desktop who's calling, when was the last transaction, what the transaction was about, so that the customer knows, hey, they really know about me and who I am. So we're just about at mid-breaking point for our show, and I'm going to turn the mic over to Eric. And Eric's going to talk a little bit about Steve and his company, and excited for him to do that because Steve, as I said, is a really good friend, and I actually sometimes work with Steve on projects, so I thought I'd put that in.
Well, once again, you're listening to Laura Sikorski, and of course, her show Sikorski's Thinkabouts, and her guest today, Steve Leaden. He's the founder and president of Leaden Associates, and it's an independent communications and IT consulting firm. They've been in business for over 25 years. Businesses rely on Steve's team for best-in-class designs, implementations, and the expertise to minimize risk associated with medium to large-scale enterprise implementations. Steve's a frequent speaker at national trade shows with regards to Enterprise Connect, UC Strategies, UC Summit, Information Week, National Vendor and User Conferences, and Voice Report, among others. He's a contributor and blogger for NoJitter.com, which is recognized as UCStrategies.com expert and contributes UC Strategies weekly via podcast and monthly post. He's a past president of the Society of Communications and Technology Consultants, a national association that requires ethics and objectivity as a prerequisite for membership. And you can reach Steve at the telephone number 845-496-6677. That's 845-496-6677. Or you can email him at sleaden, that's Leaden. It's not Leaden, it's Leaden, Sleaden at Leaden.com. And once again, the phone number 845-496-6677. Also, Laura is offering a free 1-hour telephone consulting session to all WLINY.com listeners. You can take her up on this fabulous offer to discuss an operations or technology issue that you may be experiencing in your call center. You can send her an email at lsikorski, that's Sikorski, at laurasikorsky.com, or you can call her at 631-624-6650. That's 631-624-6650 to set up your appointment today. And now back to Laura Sikorski and Sikorski's Thinkabouts.
Thank you, Eric. I'd just like to also tell you a little bit about Leaden Associates and what the services that they do for our industry. They do assessments, discovery of telephony, UC again and contact center, optimizations and centralization for contact centers. They procure networks, do project management, and they do ongoing support services. So Leaden Associates is an all-encompassing communications consulting firm. So we were just talking about replacement for a company's business phone system. What I want to talk about now, Steve, is kind of to switch gears a little bit and talk about the overall steps towards a strategic plan. You and I, many times when we do projects together, we go immediately to the company's website and take a look at what their vision is for the next 2 to 5 years. So, Steve, I'm going to turn it back to you and talk about strategic planning.
Thanks, Laura. So we have realized over a period of time that users need, in order to sell, again, a multi-million-dollar project, if they're enterprises in the larger space, which is where most of our clients are. And whether you're a smaller shop or a larger shop, you have to have a purpose and a plan around why you're asking for funding, whether it be CapEx money for an in-house solution on the property, on the premise, or whether you're looking at a cloud-based solution, which that typically will increase your OpEx dollars, pretty significantly over a period of time. So what we have learned is that when clients have a strategic plan, and of course we can help with that, but aside from that, it really shows upper management that you have a vision as to where you're going for the company. So for example, what we encourage every client to do is to identify and review your corporate and strategic plans. So I'll give you one example. We were working with a major university who had to invest over $13 million in an infrastructure that was well over 20,000 endpoints. And it was the entire unified communication suite. It was contact center. It was telephony, voice over IP. It was everything because of a very old, aging system that had capacity issues. And what we did was we went back to the president's strategic plan and the vision over the next 3 to 5 years. And one of the things that helped sell the project was the president's vision for including students in third world countries. And the idea of including a video/unified communications desktop software app on every tablet. So they basically got funding across 9,000 students for 9,000 iPads. Then the idea was to load this UC app on all 9,000 individuals and then give people the ability when they were in third world countries to either do live video chat or to actually attend a session slash class with the faculty member and with the class in general. So very, very powerful. So again, we married that third-party app, that third-party vision, if you will, to it, and eventually we got funding. That was just one of the areas, of course. And then we have to identify what technology should be on the roadmap. So that would be step 2. So I'll get into the technologies in a little while with you, Laura, because there's plenty of them out there. But the idea of just looking at unified communications, contact centers, and telephony, in the suite and the set of features that we've already been talking about, you need to include them. So the biggest driver on these features is this: your competition is using it, and if you're not, then you're going to be behind the times within the next 24 to 36 months. We see it all the time.
Right.
So then step number 3 really is to closely watch the latest announcements from the industry. So, for example, Avaya, being one of the vendors out there, just surfaced from Chapter 11 in late December, and they were at a conference last week and announced all kinds of announcements around artificial intelligence, around the cloud, around an acquisition of Spoken.com, and other things going on. Step 4 would really be around getting an NDA from the vendors that you're considering, go deep, and then developing a pro forma specification so you can get a sense of what the budgetaries should be over the next 24 to 36 months. And then the next step really would be to include your current, take a look at your current infrastructure, your cabling infrastructure, your data infrastructure. Are those ready for unified communications? Many are not. And closets, obviously, amongst other things.
Right.
And then the next key would be return on investment. So we spend a lot of time with clients on return on investment strategies. With the one client that I mentioned with the $13 million acquisition, we actually came up with $8.5 million in hard dollar savings annually. We're also working with another retailer at the moment, over 500 sites, and came up with basically a 10-year plan that showed that they had to spend $70 million over a 10-year period, and yet the savings that we were able to accrue, all hard dollar, all documented, we were able to save them $69 million. So the net spend on an entire UC replacement, an entire contact center replacement, an entire data infrastructure replacement, including all data hardware as well as the WAN, if you will, was a net $1 million to the customer over a 10-year period. So it's those things that help, drive the approvals by upper management.
Right, right. And a lot of people, and some may be glazing over a little bit, Steve, on the technical terminology that we're using. But we have to understand that when you do new technology, and one of the technologies that Steve mentioned is artificial intelligence, and that's that whole issue we've had past shows about, and that's chatbots and how computers can become people-friendly, and they don't know that they're talking to a piece of technology. So the other thing I'd like to talk about a little bit, Steve, is there's a lot of things out there in terms of technology that need to be on your strategic plan, but let's not do it all in one time. Kind of go slowly. Test it out. A lot of times people say, oh yeah, I want all that on day one. Well, it doesn't work like that, folks, because day one is just to make sure your phone system works and you can get your dial tone and you can get inbound calls and make outbound telephone calls. But Steve, are they offering today any great incentives? And when I say they, that's those technology vendors out there. What are they doing to get people to buy their stuff?
So there's a couple of things. Number one, some of them are offering creative leasing, which that's been around for quite some time. But again, referring back to the Avaya scenario, that again they just arrived out of Chapter 11. They have some major incentives going on within their base, which is well over 80 million endpoints. Between what they call Avaya Blue, the legacy Nortel group, and Avaya Red, the legacy Avaya group. And, there was some erosion during the Chapter 11 period, so they're offering some major incentives, whether it be to stay with Avaya or actually going to competitive markets. In fact, I've actually been, it's been shared with me that they're not going to lose a job based upon pricing. So Therefore, if you're considering any of the manufacturers out there, in my opinion, you should look at Avaya for baseline purposes and comparison purposes, along with the others that I had shared with you earlier. It's just, I think it's a great opportunity within the next 12 to 18 months where vendors are going to offer you some of these new technologies at no cost. So, for example, it used to be only 3 years ago that if you bought a telephony replacement only, okay, you would be spending around $800 per endpoint. Okay, and now today you can actually get that desktop, okay, you can get your traditional voicemail, call accounting, et cetera, but you can now get the entire UC suite that we were sharing, and in our world it's typically running around $700 per endpoint. So basically the vendors out there are pretty much giving away the UC component in order to mature, the market. And then, of course, you've got now new players such as Slack and others with a new technology called Workstream Communications, which is really, in the simplest of terms, it's really interactive email, if you will, and files and sharing that people can do in a real-time manner. And there's just a lot of new entrants into our space, as well, Laura. So, for example, CPaaS, which is Communications Platform as a Service, and I'll equate it to like an Uber or a Domino's that you can track your pizza. This kind of idea of integrating that into a contact center environment to give individual users that real-time experience is just huge. And it's actually becoming, in our culture, a new de facto expectation.
And you hit on the word, it's expectation. We talked a little earlier in the show, and it was, people are expecting you to have how they want to communicate with you. So it is extremely important. Well, I can't believe it, Steve. We're close to almost the end of our show and our time together this morning.
Wow.
I know, it goes fast, right? And,
sure does.
we always have a kind of an end of the Sikorski's Think About show, and that's, one or two takeaways for our, listeners to do. But I just want to, before we go into that, I'd like to make sure that, listeners out there, there are so many publications that you could read about the technology. The nojitter.com is a great one. There are magazines that deal quite a bit. There's Call Center Pipeline and a various stream of call center magazines. You can go on icmi.com. They are one of the leaders in the call and contact center industry from a customer's perspective. So please, all of you listeners out there, that's how you can become educated. And certainly, we are here to help you with that. So Steve, sorry for the interrupt, but give us one or two ways that we can kind of tell our folks out there what to do first to get their UC strategy on board.
You bet. So one of the things is that, and you can do these with actually cloud applications. You don't necessarily have to buy a brand new system, but the key is POC or proof of concept.
Exactly.
And then the idea would be you have a group of people that are very friendly within your organization, whether it be in the contact center space or general administrative people, but try out and test bed these new features and functions with that particular proof of concept group and get feedback, okay? And then you'll be able to articulate and start the process in terms of how it's going to benefit your company. There is a huge amount of ROI around the UC space, and in the area of contact center, it's even greater, Laura. I mean, the idea of that we can potentially, or actually in many cases, pay for the entire UC replacement of the old telephony infrastructure just by the contact center ROI savings alone, with studies that we've done, and some of them with you, of course, are dramatic. Okay, that's all I can say
right.
in terms of managing FTEs, et cetera. So the other thing is, the other last talking point is that the industry is growing by leaps and bounds. So, for example, contact center market by 2022 is going to be $407 billion.
Wow.
And while the UC market is going to be $143 billion. So, and then you start adding ISDN, Internet of Things, IoT, the devices that are real-time, and SDN, which is data technology, and big data, which is really the underlying mechanism to, collection of customer information, and AI that we spoke to earlier. Those projections are at $785 billion even without IoT, which that's $6 trillion. The market is just going to be massive. So the idea is that the market's going to take off. If your organization is not going to be part of that, to some degree, you're going to be behind, as I shared within the next 24
Right,
to 36
and
months.
that's, you don't want to be behind the 8 ball, folks, so you want to, probably are going to have to re-listen to the show a few times to make sure you've got all those great technologies that Steve mentioned. So I want to thank my guest, Steve Leaden, for appearing today, and not appearing, but having his voice today. And of course, thank you to our producer, Eric Koppelman.
You're very welcome.
Who
Thank
is
you.
our king of Internet radio, for a great job today and making us all sound great. And of course, www.wliny.com is live, our show on Mondays. And if you would like to be a guest on my show, do not hesitate to call my cell, 631-624-6650. And thank you so much for listening or clicking in, and have a perfect rest of the day.